Channel 114. Visitry. Channel 114.
On Friday, August 28th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $73,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $73,000.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
The Super 6 jackpot continues to climb. And on Friday, August 28th, $864,700. That's the next Super 6 jackpot.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Roundtable Talk. As you know, general elections are constitutionally due here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines by March next year. With us to talk about electoral matters, the registration process, and other pertinent issues in the studio this evening are the Supervisor of Elections, Mrs. Dora James. We have her deputy in Sylvester King, and the registering officer in Mr. Charles Samuel. Thank you, lady and gentlemen, for joining us for this evening's program. I'm going to start by asking what exactly is happening in your department right now. I know there's no date for elections as yet, but we know that it's imminent. What is happening? How are you preparing for the eventuality?
Okay, good afternoon and thanks for having us. This will be an exciting evening as we talk about preparation for elections. Right now, we work on all this as usual because that is weekly. We register, and we find that persons are getting excited, so we see the numbers are adding up. Internally, we make sure that we get our cards and we try to do as quickly as possible so that people can have them on time. And we start the preparation in terms of gathering of all the documents that we would need to use for nominations, for election day. And we also make sure that our staff, because the staff would be extended. Right now we have the office and field staff, but we have to have all those workers who we would need on election day. That would be an exciting time. So we have to get all those persons ready. And we are in the process of gathering all the information and so on.
How is the registration process going so far? I don't know if the registering officer would like to take that one, or the deputy. How is the process going so far? Are people excited? Are they coming in droves? What's happening there?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us once again. The registration process is an ongoing process. It never stops. We continue to capture those who are registering for the first time and to upgrade those who have had an ID card for over a period of 10 years or who may have changed constituency or whose card may have been destroyed in one way or another, lost, burnt. And for those who are coming to us for the very first time, at this time, it is slightly different from the usual.
What's the difference?
In that, because election is around the corner, everybody feels that I must have an updated ID card. So that is a driving force of getting them to come at this time. So they are rarely coming in their droves. Rarely.
So there's a lot of enthusiasm, you say?
A lot of enthusiasm out there. Sometimes you have to go beyond the call of duty in order to facilitate the crowds that you have on afternoons. Because we register twice per week on Mondays and Wednesdays, 5:30. We start at 3:30, but there are times when we cannot leave before 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 5:30.
3:30 to 5:30.
And
That's the
days
usual
again?
time. But there are times when you cannot leave before 7 o'clock.
Okay, I'm a first-time voter. I want to register. What do I do? What is the process?
Certainly. Let me say it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a first-time voter, so that means I have attained the age of 18, because you must first of all attain the age of 18. Secondly, you must have lived on attaining that age in the same constituency, in the same place for 6 consecutive months. So, and I know this is important because a number of persons are turning 18, and as they turn 18, they are seeking to have their card. So you must have lived 6 straight consecutive months up to attaining the age of 18 in that location. Then you will need to have an original copy of your birth certificate along with a photocopy. So you take that original birth certificate along with your photocopy. That is for if you're born in St. Vincent. Because if you're born in St. Vincent, naturally you're a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that's all you may require. But if you were born elsewhere, you would still need to bring along that original birth certificate. And let me clarify it. If you're born outside of St. Vincent, we need to see the birth certificate of one of the parents who is Vincentian to establish your nationality. Because persons who are not a part of the Commonwealth of nations, of countries, cannot just register in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we need to ensure that if you were born outside, let's say for example you were born in the US and you have parents who are Vincentian, you can be registered, but we will need to see the birth certificate of that parent that is Vincentian, and along with the copy. Let's say you were not born anywhere in the Commonwealth of countries, but you have attained citizenship. So we will need to see your citizenship certificate along with a photocopy. So, and let's say this is the first time, but you have been married. We would also want to see your marriage certificate to establish how did you arrive at this new name that you are carrying. And we'd want to see a copy of it. Now, so we have different categories of persons who can be registered. You have persons who are citizens, persons who have by naturalization, persons by descent, and persons who are of the Commonwealth of Nations. So those are the categories of persons who can register in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And what I did a while ago was to outline those documents. They basically covered those areas. Let's say, because we know that persons who are not citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines can get registered, providing that they are members within the Commonwealth of Nations. There are 54 of those nations. That person must have lived in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for 12 straight months legally. Now, people come to your country sometimes in an illegal way, but we must establish that they're here legally. So we would need to check their passport to see when they arrive and how they came, and also what sort of business they are here on. They must have lived within that 12 months, 6 straight months out of the 12, in one location. And this is important because the law, the RPA that governs how the electoral work is done, is very, very specific when it talks about establishing or determining residence within. How do you determine the residence of a person? They must have lived there for 6 months. And the law speaks to this. It says that when you're determining residence, where a person sleeps is usually determined as the ordinary residence. So we would want to see that you have been sleeping there or staying there.
How do you determine that? How do you
Well, wherever you sleep, that's where the law says that's determined as your residence.
Yeah.
So let's say, Teresa, you sleep in Annisville occasionally, but then you go find yourself, you have a friend in Beckway. So
I wonder why you chose Beckway.
I don't know why. I just believe you love Beckway. But you occasionally sleep in Beckway. At the time of qualifying or seeking to be registered, we must prove and establish that you are sleeping in this area. This is the area that you spent the period of time that is required. So if you want to register in Beckway, make sure that you are in Beckway for that period of time that the law says you must be there for the 6 months.
Isn't that a kind of tricky thing to establish there? Somebody might sleep half the night in Annisville and half the night somewhere
Well,
else. So.
they would have to determine where they sleep more frequently.
Where is there?
And which of those places they have greater affinity. Because you know, and I know, even though a person sleeps in a particular area, they have greater attachment somewhere.
Tell me about some of the challenges that you have been having in respect of the registration process. What are some of the common challenges?
Okay.
And anybody
Yes,
can
And
jump in.
then I will jump
And
in.
then you jump in.
Yes.
Up to this afternoon, it is the adhering to the photocopy of your birth certificate. They're still coming to you and saying, but I didn't know that. And that's one of the biggest challenges that I think, on my part, that I know that I'm having. It is to turn up with that photocopy of their birth certificate. Other than that, the other challenge that we face is, let me see, one of those that we have is where people will turn up and do not know where they were living when they had the previous ID card. I find it strange. I don't know if it's a trick they're trying to play. But you try to prove where were you living when you had this ID card. May live the same place. Where did you vote the last? And then they will scratch the head. I didn't vote. I say, yeah, you voted. Where did you vote? And it is outside of the constituency. And then you realize they might be living in your constituency, but they are not registered in the constituency. So instead of coming forward and say, look, I need a transfer, they still try to obtain the card without telling you that they were not living in the constituency when they had the card that they are presenting to you.
When we come back, we'll expand on that some, because I see that you want to quickly get into that. We'll take our first break and back in just a moment.
114. Channel 114.
Tonight on the VC3 News Update, some 143 students throughout SVG are in a better financial position to prepare for the upcoming school year following the annual Senior Lewis Education Fund Award ceremony. Vincentians are being assured that the National Geothermal Project has not been abandoned. And Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves has made it clear that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has no further interest in investing in the regional air carrier, LEAC.
And in local sports, Hope International inched a step closer to being crowned the 2019-2020 Premier Division champions of the National Club Championships. Also, in the National Club Championship, System 3 eased into second place with a 2-1 downing of Avenues United.
We'll have all these stories and more coming up at 7 p.m. tonight on the VC3 News Update.
Welcome back. Just before we took our first break, we were talking about some of the challenges that you face the registration process. And Teacher Dora, I know you were eager to jump in on that.
Yes, I want to pick up from Mr. Samuel in relation to persons who would come to the constituency, but they were not previously registered in that constituency. And there is nothing wrong with you seeking to change your residence, but you need to come forward and say that you are going to change your residence. If you try to register in a constituency that you were not previously registered, your card went out and we will find you. Once the information comes in, we are going to say this person was not registered here. Mm-hmm. So we have your record. And so we ask people to change their residence if they wish to. That's a choice. We are not forcing you to do that. So we have what is called, the law allows you to change your residence on what is called a Form 8. And on that form, you are giving notice to the Supervisor of Elections. You're saying, take notice that I have changed my place of residence from this place, and you're going to say where and the constituency. And then you will give the information, I'm going to this place. And the electoral information and so on will be included in that form. Now that form is filled out by the registration officer. The registration officer in the constituency where you wish to reside. So if, for example, I am from North Leeward and I had registered in the constituency of North Leeward, and then I decide I'm going to Central Kingston or East Kingston because now I'm living in Kingston or West Kingston for that matter. I will go to the registration officer in, say, West Kingston, and I said, okay, I'm now living in New Montrose, and I would want to change my place of residence as it relates to the electoral process. I will be given that form. She will fill out the information. The form must be completed by the registration officer, and I will take that form to a justice of the peace who knows me. On that form, the justice of peace would say, I have known Dora James for the past 50 years, and I have known that she is living in West Kingston for the past 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case might be. So we are holding our justice of peace responsible. We are saying you must be a responsible citizen, exercising your duty, and you must know. You must give the facts. Because if we have to use that information further down the road, we are going to ask you, because you are the person who verified the information. So we say to our justice of peace, be factual. Make sure you know. Let people go to the persons they know and not a friend take you. In addition to that, we have persons who just want to see if they can beat the system. So they're not living there for 6 months, but somebody says to them, go and say you live there for 6 months. Now there's a penalty for lying. The law says if you gave wrong information, then you should be held accountable. And so later we can go into some of the challenges that we face when people come and try to register. Some of them, they register, but when we look at the information, somebody might call you in, or we might find out somewhere or the other.
Because you have a way of verifying.
We have a way of verifying. We try to verify our information. And it is not always that we tell you how we get to you. So we would get you and we would put you on suspension. There are a number of persons who try to get away. We have not taken anybody to court. We try to, appeal to their conscience and say, listen to me, you are doing something wrong. You don't have to lie. If you don't have the time, you will make sure that you spend the time. Just today I had somebody who complained that he will never have an ID card. And I said, why did you say that? He's a sailor. So because of COVID, he's here for a while. But he has not lived for the 6 months. And I'm saying to him, this card is for us a voter's card. And we have to comply with the law as it relates to a voter. And until you can wait that time, because some people leave, they don't care, they say they have other cards, they have other identification, and now they are facing the challenge of waiting that 6 months to gain that card.
So this would have been someone who have never had one?
Never had a card. Never had a card. He's in his 30s. He never had a card, but he didn't bother to look for a card, and now he is finding himself in a situation where he needs a card, but he cannot have the card because he never spent 6 months in that. And Mr. King spoke to the fact where persons are seeking to re-register because they were not on the list. They have spent some time maybe abroad or even St. Vincent. You would be surprised that there are a number of persons in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who have not had the new card we have now. They never went anywhere, they just did not bother, and they would tell you, I didn't want to vote. But now they need the card to go to MoneyGram, to do business and so on. They're finding a problem, and now they want to get on the list. And we're saying to them, when you have to go back on the list, it is as though you're doing it for the first time. So you have to meet all of the requirements. And sometimes they have a problem with that because they will tell you, I'm a Vincentian and I should get on. But yes, you're a Vincentian. You have the right to get on, but you must meet the criteria.
I want to, before you go on, because I think I want to zero in a little more on some of the challenges on this change of residence. One of the things that is so unique about the electoral office as against other departments. In other departments, you can obtain most of the forms that I use in other departments without them being filled. And you can perhaps keep them in your copy, in your possession, I mean. With the electoral office, any form that is coming from the electoral office must be filled by an officer of the electoral office. What we are seeing now is persons trying to obtain some of the forms that we use so that, as if to say, ease of passage where I have forms in my possession, come to me. Well, it will not work in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and it will not work in this time. We are observing that there are certain people who are not supposed to have the change of residence form, distributing them persons.
We'll talk some about
So
that.
that's
Someone
something.
wants to know, if my national identification card is lost, can I use another form of ID on elections day?
Certainly, the law provides that you can use a picture ID. So let's name them: a passport, a driver's license. Now you have farmer's license. They have a picture of you. So we can use it. And outside of that, we have a poll card on every registered voter with a photo on it.
A poll card?
That's right.
What's a poll card?
The poll card is just a duplicate of the MasterCard.
Okay.
When you go to do your registration, the registering officer will take that information down where your address, your name, all of the information that are captured on your birth certificate. And that card is kept on record in our office. So on election day, we ensure that those poll cards are at every polling station. So for example, when you come to vote, Teresa, and you say, my name is Teresa A. Daniel, well, I know A is not the second name. The records are right there. So we can verify it even if you didn't come with your ID card. Okay. We will see a photo of you when you were 18 years old, because that probably might be the one that is on the card. But we will compare the information, and we'll compare the card with the photo with any other ID that you bring to make sure. And with our new system, we're doing new printout of that person's photo, and that is now part of their poll card. So even though you had an old one, an old photo, when you were 18 years old, now because we have this new system and we are re-registering persons, and every time you re-register, you have to take a photo. So that latest photo is available to us.
So that poll card is in the polling station on election day?
Will be in the polling station on election day.
Okay.
And apart from another point that being there, it speeds up the process by you bringing a form of identification. Because if you don't, it means the presiding officer has to take time now to go into the little kit that he or she has to go and look for your photo ID. So if you come with a photo ID, they don't have to interfere with that, and the process of voting is much quicker. It's much quicker. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to spend and waste time, as we say, to go and look in the kit for your ID.
Mm-hmm. Where do I register? I want to register. Maybe it's the first time or what have you. Where do I
So there are centers established in all of the constituencies where persons can go to register. In fact, we are admonishing and encouraging and asking persons to go to the registering center in their constituency. There are a number of good reasons for that. Mm-hmm. There are a number of good reasons for that. Nothing we do in the electoral office is secret. Everything is open. And in fact, our mandate says that we are responsible for free, fair, and transparent elections. So when you go to the constituency to do your registration, it's open. Mm-hmm. I can see that Charles is coming to register. And I can make an objection if I think Charles is not living there. Plus, you have a chance to have some camaraderie and catch up with some old friends as you go to the center. Now, there are about 2 to 3 centers, well, a minimum of 2 centers in every constituency. Mm-hmm. And now that we're in the election phase, there are some places where you have 3 centers or 4 centers, right? And every week, the registration is done specifically on a Monday and a Wednesday, from the hours 3:30 to 5:30. There's a rotation system that is at work. So we go one place this week, the Monday and the Wednesday. The following week, we will change it until we get to the end of the month. So I want persons to note, don't say you go this week and the persons were not there. There's a rotation. So let's give examples. For East St. George.
And when we come back,
sure.
I want to hear all the names of the centers in the various constituencies. I think you actually listed them on another program and another system. So I think you know exactly where they are. And
well, let's see how good we are on that.
Also, 2 questions to be answered when we come back for our next session. Back in just a moment.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
The Super 6 jackpot continues to climb. And on Friday, August 28th, $864,700. That's the next Super 6 jackpot.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Tonight on the VC3 News Update, some 143 students throughout SVG are in a better financial position to prepare for the upcoming school year following the annual Senior Lewis Education Fund Award ceremony. Vincentians are being assured that the National Geothermal Project has not been abandoned. And Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves has made it clear that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has no further interest in investing in the regional air carrier, LEAC.
And in local sports, Hope International inched a step closer to being crowned the 2019-2020 Premier Division champions of the National Club Championships. Also, in the National Club Championship, System 3 eased into second place with a 2-1 downing of Avenues United.
We'll have all these stories and more coming up at 7 p.m. tonight on the VC3 News Update.
On Friday, August 28th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $73,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $73,000.
Welcome back. Before you give us the list of centers, someone wants to know if dual citizens can become members of parliament. And there's another question. If I have no photo ID, but the officers working the polling stations can identify me, would I be able to vote? Officers, meaning the presiding officer and poll clerks.
Okay, Mr. King just spoke about having the photo ID. So once the person's name is on the list, they will be allowed to vote. So we just have to find them, find their photo ID, and we allow them to vote.
Certainly. And, also there is the oath of identity that a person can swear to, that I am Sylvester King. So that is a safety measure that is in place, and it is used also to make sure that the right identity of the person is established. We were talking before we took the break, and I don't want this to be missed because there are some important forms that we don't want anybody else distributing them than the officers within the electoral office. We notice that even politicians are encouraging, and unfortunately I have to say it, because a change of residence form, which is really what gives a transfer, that form can only be obtained from the electoral office. And when that form is obtained, it cannot be filled by the registrant. The registrant cannot fill that form. Nobody else is authorized to fill that form besides the registering officer.
And let me just pick up from King, because King spoke to the fact that they can get it from us. But we that we know that persons are seeking the form because they come to us and ask. They ask for it in numbers. We want some forms, change of residence forms. And we say, go to the registration officer because we are not giving it at the office. The registration officer in the constituency where you're going to seek that registration, there is where you're going to get a filled out form. Because the registration officer must sign the form before they hand it to you. So if that form comes to us and it is not properly done, and we have not seen that signature that we seek for, it will not be completed.
So you're saying that people actually come to the office?
Yes, people
and
come. I
collect the
think they
forms.
misunderstand. So we are saying it because we don't want them to come to the office. Nor do we want them to go to somebody else outside of the registration officer and seek the form. Somebody came to ask us to complete their form. So we knew up front that there were persons who are circulating forms, and we stopped him because we said this must be done by the registration officer. You cannot have a form seeking to change your residence without the permission of the registration officer. And the registration officer must sign it. And it is going to be scrutinized when it comes to the office. We have to verify that the information is true. That is why we will hold the GPs responsible. Because we say to you, this is a responsible person. The fact that you're being an officer of our nation to verify information, you must do that. If you don't, then we're going to hold you responsible.
And strengthening that point that the supervisor made, the JP that knows you must not be a JP that knows you from just any place. It must be a JP that lives in that specific constituency that you're seeking to be transferred to. Because, let's face it, I know a lot of JPs. They know me from Kingstown. They know me from Beckway. But they're not living where I am seeking to be transferred. I cannot go to those JPs to sign me a transfer notice or form because they will not be truthful. They don't know that I live up there. They know that they see me wrong tongue. And importantly, and administratively, the supervisor of election can put measures in place to do a number of reconciliation. And thankfully, we have that measure in place. We have a logbook that logs all of these stuff. So the JPs, and we are saying to JPs, you are an officer of the state. And there's a high level of expectation and responsibility placed entrusted to you. You must say that I have known Sylvester King to have been living in Glen for the last 20 years. And I must sign out my name, print it out. We don't want JPs to do the scratching thing that you can't identify the name. You know, some persons, they're very doctoral in their signature. You know what I mean? We don't want that. We want it to be printed so that we could read that Charles Samuel signed to say he knew that Sylvester King was living in that area. They may sound simple, but not until a litigation comes, then you realize how important these minute things are, because the lawyers will look and say, but Charles, you signed this? How is it that you say you know and you were living in the Grenadines? So we want people to be upfront with it. And so, you know.
Okay, somebody is wanting to seek clarification on why myself, who is a born and bred Vincentian national, needs to establish residency in SVG to vote. To me, that's a violation of my Vincentian citizenship. Who wants to take that?
Well, as we say, the ID card that you're going to get is a voter's card, and the law states exactly what qualification you must have to be a voter. So we are not violating anybody's right. You just, once you're eligible, you're eligible. If you're Vincentian, living in a constituency for 6 months or more, you're eligible.
And additionally to that, Whenever you get registered for a national identification card, you are placed in a constituency and in a polling division.
Yes.
So the residency is to correctly place you in a polling division.
Yes.
If you don't say where you are living, you will not be placed in a polling division. Unlike some other countries, in St. Vincent in this jurisdiction, you are specifically placed in polling division within a constituency. Some other countries, when you get an ID card, you can vote any place in that country. Not so in St. Vincent. You could only vote in the polling division that you are placed in, and you are placed in that division based on the address that you give. So hence the reason when we're doing transfer, it is so important, because what is happening, a person may have registered in Chateaubelair. Chateaubelair is in the North Leeward constituency, but they might have been living in Fituse, Chateaubelair. Fituse, I'm correct?
Yes.
Fituse is also a different address. So your polling division in Fituse is not going to be the same as if you're in Chateaubelair proper. Now, you leave there and you come to Kingstown and you go to Arnesville. Arnesville and Fituse are not the same. And we are saying to persons, hence the reason, whenever you're doing transfers, you have to remember you did the transfer. So when the next list is published, your name will no longer appear in Chateaubelair or Fituse. Your name is now going to appear where? Arnesville. So hence the reason why people must record these things and be aware, because on a day you could go down to Chateaubelair but you will never find a name there, and you will make the accusation that we took a name off.
The question of people's names not being on a list or on the voters list. I know many people may migrate or may have migrated, and I think that is the case with this particular person who's asking that question. So you have been out of the country, say 10, 20 years. You have not updated
your registration.
So hence the problem.
Yep.
And you have not been on the ground for the 6 months.
And a lot of the returnees, a lot of the sailors who have returned home because of COVID, a number of persons who have returned home because of COVID would find that their names are not on the voters list. And they may be seeking to get it back on, but the only how they could get back on, they would have to be living here for a period of 6 months. I met a pilot who flies internationally who came to us just recently. His last registration was in 1982. You see, his name has since been removed, but COVID has caused him
to come home.
Now, until he lives here for the 6 months, he will not be able to get back onto the list.
Okay, 2 questions. King is saying that you can only vote at the polling division, but can't I vote at any polling division within that constituency?
No.
An emphatic no to that one. And if I'm living overseas with a Vincentian passport, why can't I get a Vinci ID? Because you have not registered.
That's correct. It's like a nice response, because you see, the ID and the passport are not too identically the same. They're identity documents, but they're not, the same criteria is not set up.
Right, the requirements to get both of them are not the same.
No, they're not the same. They're not the same.
So there you go. I was speaking with someone, a young man, mid-30s, who says that he registered once, on one occasion, and had, and probably still has, an outdated national ID.
Blue card.
But what he's saying is that he is now listed as dead on the list. Is that possible? But yet he pays taxes, he pays NIS, but he says that he is listed as...
He's listed dead?
Well, if he is dead, he would not be listed on the list.
That's the problem. He is listed where as dead?
Well, he is the... I don't know. He said his name is...
He needs to check us at the office.
So I advise him...
he should check us at the office.
I advise him that he needed...
Because they're persons with identical names.
They're
persons with identical names.
First name, second name, and surname. So he needs to check us.
And maybe... similar date of birth as well.
Yes, you could have
that happens.
Yes.
Right. So he need to check the office so that can be sorted out.
Okay. I would reinforce that to him again.
Yes.
So does this office give the list of the JPs in the constituencies?
Well, I can tell you up front, it's online.
Yes.
Electoral.gov.vc. A list of the JPs are published. Now, when you go there, you may find that there's some persons whose name are there, but they're deceased. That's natural because people die every day. And so you may have had a JP listed and the person died and the name is not yet removed. But if you go on that website, if you have a smartphone, if you have any device that you have, you can just type in on a Google page, electoral.gov.vc, that's electoral, because some people put in electoral and they would not get that page. So electoral.gov.vc, and on the constituencies you will find a list of places, a list of JPs, and which would be for easy reference.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about the right to remain registered as a voter.
Yes.
We'll also get that list that
certainly, not a problem.
Put together.
Not a problem.
And when we come back after our final break.
Tonight on the VC3 News Update, some 143 students throughout SVG are in a better financial position to prepare for the upcoming school year following the annual Senior Lewis Education Fund Award ceremony. Vincentians are being assured that the National Geothermal Project has not been abandoned. And Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves has made it clear that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has no further interest in investing in the regional air carrier, LIAC.
And in local sports, Hope International inched a step closer to being crowned the 2019-2020 Premier Division champions of the National Club Championships. Also, in the National Club Championship, System 3 eased into second place with a 2-1 downing of Avenues United.
We'll have all these stories and more coming up at 7 p.m. tonight on the VC3 News Update.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
The Super 6 jackpot continues to climb. And on Friday, August 28th, $864,700. That's the next Super 6 jackpot.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Welcome back. I want to look a little bit at the right to remain registered as a voter. Let's talk a bit about that, Supervisor.
Okay. You have a right to remain registered once you have registered. The law says every person registered as a voter pursuant to this part shall remain registered, and that part is Section 7. Unless he has died, an objection to his registration has been allowed. So somebody could say to us, you know, Sylvester King should not have been registered in the constituency where he was seeking registration because he does not live there. And there's an objection, we remove that. He has been absent from St. Vincent and the Grenadines for a period exceeding 5 years except in cases of absence for approved studies abroad. He has become disqualified under any law for registration or for exercising his rights as a voter. And like that, for example, if that person was sentenced to prison for over 12 months, once you're in prison, in any institution, in St. Vincent, we don't allow you to vote. You're not allowed because the law does not allow you. And there are other reasons that they would list why. So that is why we don't go to institutions to register persons. If they come out, then that is so. But once you're registered, you have the right to remain registered. If there is no objection, once you're alive and kicking, you will remain on the list. But we urge you to make sure that you continue to update your registration.
So that the information
so that you will,
correct.
Yes.
So somebody is saying, I'm a police registered to vote in B1 Central Leeward, but I'm down to work in polling station A Central Leeward. Are you telling me that I cannot vote there? What is a transfer certificate? So 2 questions there.
Okay, so in the case of that person, once you're working on election day, you will be allowed to vote in that polling division on transfer.
Yes.
So you will get, like in the case the person raised, the registered B1, you're working in A. You will be given a transfer, and you will, because you're working in the constituency, and the workers, they will be placed in the constituencies where they're registered. But in that division, because you're not working in that particular division, for some reason or the other, you might not be able to be placed there. You will be given a transfer because you can't give up your right because you're working.
Mm-hmm. So that particular vote would be counted
in the constituency. It's a constituency vote.
Mm-hmm. But don't get confused, because what is happening, the person is in B. Mm-hmm. They're working in A. A transfer certificate will provide a move from B to A. So he is in the same constituency. And this is this provision is only made for workers. So any ordinary voter can do that.
A worker.
Because to begin with, when we do the transfer certificate, it is as if we're adding that person's name now to A. So on the list of persons eligible to vote at A, his name would now be added.
But because at the same time, it is removed
from B.
From where he is originally registered.
Okay.
So it is
and that is done when? On the day of elections?
No, it is not done on the day. It is done really before.
Yeah, because we have all the lists.
And that must be
who is working where.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So we can prepare, and in the case of a police officer, that list will be provided to the supervisor of elections ahead of time. And the supervisor of election will prepare a supplementary list that will be attached to that new polling station, so that you would see that his name is on that list. His name will no longer appear on the previous list. It is the same process. If you do a transfer, your name does not appear on the place that you used to be. It's now appear on the new area that you are going to be in.
So it's a subtraction
and an addition, so it doesn't change.
Yes, but all the votes in that constituency, remember that is counted as one.
Yes.
So you're still in your constituency.
I wanted us to strengthen the point that you made with regards to the right to remain. And that's an important section in the RPA, because that's what gives the empowerment to remove persons from the list, right? Because you remove names if a person has died. That's what Supervisor just read. You also remove persons if they have lived five years outside of St. Vincent and Grenadines. But that usually will take place once an census is conducted, and then it is followed by an enumeration.
Yes.
All right? So we have not had one of those in recent time. The last one was in 2005. But importantly, the law was amended in 2015 to gave the Electoral Office the opportunity to clean up the voters list. So that's when the 23,000 names were removed. The next time we will do that is 2025.
Yes.
So we don't need a census for that. And we don't need, if you're still alive in 2025, but you had not updated your card
In that 10 years.
in the last 10 years, your name would also be removed at that time.
Okay.
So that's one of the good things that St. Vincent and the Grenadines the Electoral Office has achieved. And we must credit the former supervisor for the laborious work that went in to ensure that this piece of legislation was passed in the House. Because what it does, the Electoral Office now has the authority every 10 years, in keeping with the life expiration date on your card, to clean the voters list. That's important. That's an achievement.
And
a lot of countries would love to get that.
Also like to add that the 5 years, there are some people who live abroad for all their life, let's put it that way, right? But they have been registered. But they come home every year.
Right.
You cannot count that person as living abroad for 5 years. Every year they come home, whether it's for Carnival, whether it's for Christmas, they are home and they will break the cycle. So even though they live and walk abroad, they are home every year. So you still have to count it from the last time that they were home. So they'll never make the 5 years.
You're actually responding to a question.
Yeah, but they update.
Saying, I'm living in the USA, I've kept my Vincentian ID current, and return home at a minimum every 3 years. Should I not be allowed to vote?
That person
will be allowed. That person's name will be on the list. Card,
because I have a sister like that. I have a sister like that lives outside of St. Vincent. But every time they come home and they have an occasion, they update their record, they update their passport, they update their ID. Now, once you keep those things updated, remember what we are saying. You must update every 10 years. Just remember the logics. Every 10 years, cards what? Expire. Now, you live abroad, but you're coming home to see mommy, you're coming home to see auntie. Put that as one of your priorities. And you do that, you're going to always be current.
Yeah, always. Even though you live abroad for 40, 50 years.
Okay. Great. Makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
You haven't gotten a chance to give us that list.
Sure. Well, let's look at the list. We said that registration is done in all of the constituencies. So let's start from North Windward. So in the North Windward constituency, we register at the Sandy Bay Learning Resource Center. We register at the Langley Park Government School, the Owe Government School, and the Fancy Government School. The North Central Windward constituency, we are at the Georgetown Government School. We go across to Park Hill once, and we shifted the South Rivers Methodist School. We are at the Connery Primary School, and we are at the Pamela's-Burke. So we cover that area. In the South Central Windward constituency, we are at Diamonds Government School. We're at the New Grounds Government School, we're at the Lauders Government School, and we are at the Greggs Government School. In South Windward, we are at Stubbs, we are at Bible Methodist School, Stubbs Government School, and we are at the Calder Government School. And in the Maracay constituency, we are at the Richland Park Government School, we are at the Maracay Government School, and we are at the Evesham Methodist School. So we come down to East St. George, and then in East St. George, we're at the Calocotong Hall. We are at the Fair Hall Primary School. We are at the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Belmont. So all those people who live in Belmont, they are covered. And we go to the Brighton Methodist School. In West St. George, starting in Belmont, we're at the Belmont Government School. We go to the Belair Government School, and then we are at the Doris Mackey Learning Resource Center. Then we come to East Kingston. We are at the C.W. Prescott Primary School, the Technical College. We were at the Sign Hill Clinic, but the Sign Hill Clinic is under repair, so we will go back there shortly as soon as the works are completed. So we come to Central Kingston. In Central Kingston, we are at the Police Band Room in Lago Heights. We are at the Bishop College Secondary. We are at the Lodge Village Government School. In the West Kingston constituency, we are at the Rose Place Public Health Building. We go across to Dr. J.P. Eustace Second Memorial, and we go down to the Lomans Leeward Anglican School. In South Leeward, So, seeing that we're in Lowman's Leeward, we go to the Bethel High School, we go to the Kittels Learning Resource Center, we are in the Vermont Community Center, we're at the Rillan Hill Community Center, and we're at the Clare Valley Government School. So you see, we're catering for everybody in Central Leeward. Central Leeward is a nice place, cool and nice. We're at the Bookament Secondary, we're at the Leyu Government School, and we're at the Barley Primary School. North Leeward is a nice place. We're at Spring Village, so we start in Raydon into the Spring Village, then we go up to Trumaka, we then go to Rose Hall, and then we go down to Chateaubelair. The Grenadines, oh, sunshiny place.
So I'm getting a signal that we need to wrap up, but I don't know if it kill you to say what are the ones.
Well, in the Grenadines is an easy fix. You go to Port Elizabeth and you go to Frederick, the Paget Farm Community Center, and you go to the Canawan, and we go to the Union Island, Clifton and Ashton, and Myro and Mustique. They're special people, so we go to them.
Thank you very much, Deputy Supervisor of Elections. Thank you for coming. Also, thank you to Supervisor Dora and also to the registering officer. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
That's our program for today, and I don't want the technicians to kill me, but thanks for listening, and see you again next week, Wednesday.
Is it 7?